That's better. Welcome to Nova Southeastern University's 9th Annual Power Publishing Day, brought to you by the Alvin Sherman Library. My name is Susan Berkman. I am the Assistant Director of Collection Development and Technical Services and the chair of this event. I have worked with a whole team of people to make this event a success today, and we'll talk more about that at lunch. But I want to thank you all for joining us today, in person or online. We have quite a few people online as well, for a day of learning, sharing, networking, fun, and eating. Thanks to our sponsors, Elsevier, Emerald Publishing, IGI Global, Clarivate, Sage, IEEE, CloudSource, Cambridge, Baker and Taylor, and the South Florida Writers Association. For those sponsors who have traveled from the Midwest and up north, welcome to South Florida. Sure, the weather's a lot better here than where you left. We have a very exciting program for you today, and for the first time, we have included a track for those who want to publish in the commercial area. So we're really thrilled to be adding that to our program and listening to what all your feedback has been in our previous years. Before we get started, there's a couple of housekeeping notes. Please turn your cell phones to silent or vibrate during all the sessions, as we are recording them for those who couldn't make it today and who may wish to listen to them again. There'll be sign-in sheets passed around in every session, so please make sure you sign in. You'll be getting an online evaluation form in the next few days. Please fill those out. It really helps us to know what topics you're interested in, hearing and learning about what other publishers you want to see, and gives us feedback to our presenters. At the end of the day, please return your name badge holders to the registration desk or leave them in your last room. And remember to come back for lunch, because we have some awesome door prizes and you must be present to win. Also, we are recording all of the sessions, so attendees and those who could not make it will also be getting a link to the recordings and the slides probably next week. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our VP for Information Services and University Librarian, Jim Hutchins, who will introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Susan. Once again, Susan put another great program. The program keeps on getting thicker and thicker. So like she said, this year we have some mainstream tracks, and I'm really excited for this. It's good to see so many of our faculty. I want to take a moment to recognize some of the folks from the President's Council. This is the leadership of the university. These are the deans and the vice presidents. So we have Dean Stephanie Lamana from the nursing school. We have Dean Andrea Nevins from the Farquhar Honors College, right there. And the Senior Vice President, Ken Dawson Scully, was sitting right there, and his chair is there, and he's the Senior Vice President of Research. We'll be hearing from our keynote speaker, our provost, and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Ron Chenail. So just a few things I'd like to say is, for all the Sharks, all the faculty, staff, and students, I hope you're having a great semester. I hope this is not the first time that you've been in the library. I hope you come back many times. I meant this semester. For the folks that are not from NSU, if this is your first time here, welcome. If it's your second or more, welcome back. If you don't have a library card, you should get one. Anybody that lives, works, or attends classes in Broward County is eligible for a library card, and you'll have access to things like this because you'll be on a newsletter, access to over 200 databases. And I almost forgot, I want to recognize somebody else, our president for our Circle of Friends, Andrew Martineau. Okay. So we have plenty of librarians here. Most of us have name tags. I left my name tag on my coffee table at home. I knew I was going to do that. So if you need guidance on how to get around the library, if you just want to know about what's going on in the library, we have a lot of events starting even as like our State of the Rodeo is going to be a documentary screening that we're doing in Miniachi next Wednesday. That's really going to kick off our programming for the semester. So with no further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ronald Chenail.
Well. Ken is back. He's here now, so we. Okay, let's see. Okay. I want to start by saying that this presentation today is rated R for research. It contains adult content and adult language. Viewer discretion advised. I warned you. The scary world of scholarly publishing and what we can do about it. So when I first started this presentation, Susan each year says, well, for some reason she has a memory loss and invites me back and doesn't remember what I did the previous year. And so she said, and everyone's talking about AI, and I'm going to talk about AI today, but by far that's not the major focus of this, because no matter what we worry about AI, it's kind of like I don't know, like you're probably all big fans of zombie movies like me, right? You watch them all the time, right? And when you learn in all those, it's not the zombies you have to worry so much about, it's the humans. And so as much as you worry about the AI, you should probably worry about the humans and what's going on in publications and publishing today, and also in universities today. Every day, I don't know if you get these little things, in your news feeds, and it seems like every day some article somewhere is getting retracted. That almost hardly seemed to ever happen. The other one, the big one's going around today is Dana-Farber, the Cancer Institute in Harvard, 20 some odd papers being retracted, data falsification, it's like, sounds like, figures exposed and graphic, violations, but there's a lot of bad stuff going on. I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about what we can do to improve, because if we don't, Stephanie sent me a thing the other day about how highly regarded nurses are. I don't know why the Dean of Nursing would send me that news item, but further down, it talked about university professors, and it was less than 50% of the people felt that we were trustworthy. That's not good, right? I'm not good with math, but that seems to be not good. So let's kind of talk about what's going on. These are very challenging times, and every one of us, whether you're an author, whether you're a faculty member doing peer review of your colleagues, whether you're working alone or collaboratively, whether you're a reviewer for a journal, a reviewer for faculty review, if you're an editor, if you're a publisher, if you're a reader, a consumer. I guess that's the bottom line. You're going to have to read some more and not just rely upon others, because unfortunately, there's a lot of people that may not be reliable. So my background, I'm an editor-in-chief over 30 years. And I've been an editor-in-chief of a university published journal. TQR is published here, but it's also the part of Elsevier because of the platform. Society, Journal of Marital and Family Therapy, was still published by the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. And while I was there, we turned the production over to Wiley. So I've also worked for Wiley and Taylor Francis and many of those. So I work with all different types of publishers. That's the big ones, university-based, society-based, or commercial publishers. I've worked for journals that are membership and subscription-based, open access, and hybrids. I was telling the folks earlier, I have a chapter coming out. I know you probably all read my newsfeed about now. And it's this handbook, and handbooks are very expensive, and you want to try to get your stuff read. Obviously, you put a lot of work into it. And I got this little note back from the publisher, and it said, open access is important, and you really want to get your chapter read. So for the low cost of $1,565, you too can, oh my God, I'm getting infomercials from publishers, but anyway, I'll probably get a birthday gift or something. I'm an editorial board member of a number of journals, and I've been an ad hoc reviewer. And it's for a lot of the newer journals too, like in the frontier, that area too. So you'll learn a lot about how these things are going. But also I'm a provost and a professor. So I see plenty of faculty promotion packets, and I see what we're writing and maybe what we're not doing. And, so I see this from all different directions. And I think we really need to, pay attention to what's going on. So let's talk about artificial intelligence for a little bit. It's a great potential. But it's not new. The generative AI is new, but there have been synonym producers, so artificial words, artificial intelligence could be fake consciousness. Which may not be that. Oh, never mind. And so a lot of potential emerging applications. If I don't say it at the end, I'll say it now. What you're going to see in the future, probably it's already, the steps are happening now, is that journals and articles and what authors will be reading and citing most likely will be those who are cataloged or indexed in either Scopus or the Web of Science area. And then what they'll be doing is they'll be attaching a specific AI programs to those. So what you do now with Google Scholar across the entire internet, you will go and there'll be an engine that will help you and to do your searches in those two databases. So if you're a journal and you're not in those two, you're going to be like those little towns where the federal highway went over here and you're over here. And that's something you're really going to have to look at as far as, and also whether you're an editor, whether you're a author, those are things that probably never had thought about before. So the end, I'm going to show you some resources that are out there that will help you with that, because it really, you can make some really bad decisions. As we know, the artificial intelligence is prone to errors and fabrications. And so it's a podcast I was just listening to the other day, and they're asking him about the AI. He said, it's not so much worrying about who wrote it, it's whether the research has any integrity. Right? You can be the most wonderful writer in the world, but if you're writing about something that's less than ethical or less than, accurate, then it doesn't matter really who's writing that. And so I think that's very important. Some predict that AI is actually going to move us into a post-plagiarism world. Right? And what that means is that AI can detect AI. Right? And so the idea that you thought Turnitin was, no, this is a whole different type of doing that. But at the end of the day, AI is just another means in terms of this commercial ghostwriting or this contract cheating. The Chronicle a few years ago is Confessions of a Ghostwriter. He had a doctorate in English, and he made more money writing papers for students, including writing application packets for students. They said, you got a PhD in English, how can you write like a student? I said, well, I don't rewrite. Whatever my first draft is the first draft, and I write it probably 2 or 3 times longer than it needs to be. And that's enough to fool all you guys anyway. So it's chilling. It's chilling. I have more of these terrible stories to share. So let's talk a little bit about, artificial intelligence is just in the context of higher education and scholarly publishing. So let's talk a little about what's going on today. Okay, so you've heard U.S. News and World Report, right? Yeah, I know. And so it's, whether you like it or not, it has different metrics, different outcomes to evaluate what considers to be a better university. And so just like in Florida, like in the state school, what makes for a preeminent university, it's how you're doing with your students, but also how you're doing with your scholarly productivity. And so what U.S. News is that they've added bibliometrics to their rating of universities, both in the United States as well as globally. So, and we've had similar metrics in our NSU Vision 2025 business plan for quite some time. So these are things, so citations per publication. So you can see that open access might be that kind of thing, because if people can't find your paper, can't cite it and so forth. Although I imagine some people don't even have to read the paper to cite it. There was an old show, Burns and Allen, and Gracie Allen was always Ronnie, the son, and George, the dad, and they were worried because Gracie had joined this book club with all these learned women, and they were really worried about how their mom would do. And they asked her, said, Mom, how are you gonna do okay? We're reading all these books. She goes, no, I don't have to read the books. I just have to discuss them. So sometimes when you see when things are cited in there, and I've taken a very different attitude now in terms of really looking at the references more. The idea, what about how many papers that you've reviewed and you never read the references that have been referred to in the paper? That's perfect opportunities for this kind of viral thing that's going on, which is going to be impacted when you got all these articles being retracted that have been heavily cited. A number of years ago for the Journal of Marriage and Family Therapy, every 10 years we do a special issue on the effectiveness of conjoint treatment, couples work, family work, with many different problems, adolescents and so forth and so on. And one was about the work that had been seeing the effectiveness of conjoint treatment, seeing the couple together when alcoholism was part of the problem. And so there were the two researchers, they were the main researchers, one at the University of Buffalo, one at the University of Harvard. And so my colleague, Doug Sprankley, who's a senior member of the field, and he said, I'm having trouble getting in touch with a guy at Buffalo. So he kind of did his work. He goes, he's dead. And so we kind of dug in a little bit more, and it looked like that there was an investigation. There was a misconduct claim against him saying that there was something wrong with his data. Well, they did the study and they saw all these recordings with all these couples working with their therapists, and they said, it's there. We saw all of that. And so the person in Harvard was the number cruncher. He did the data, the analysis. Well, the guy in Buffalo was, because his reputation had been besmirched. Nobody wants to be besmirched, right? Nobody likes that. And so they then said, well, okay, we'll do further work. And so they brought in some of the family members and they said, okay, so when you were in this treatment and you were, well, we're actors. We were hired to be a couple. And then they talked to the therapist and they said, well, we were working with real couples. See, this is the perfect double blind. They didn't know there was in that. And so they asked it was all based upon not real people. Well, they're real actors. So they asked the person at Harvard, well, didn't you know? I go, I just did the statistics. That's not a good answer. The sad thing is that most of the addiction research in the field cited these people. Can't get that back. So weighted citation impact, publications cited in the top 5% of journals. Now this is in Scopus. Have you ever read Scopus? So if you're a journal editor, you're put into different groups. So the qualitative report, which we do here at the university, we're in cultural studies. And so how highly you're ranked in there, how many citations you get. So as an editor, you worry about those things, and there's different strategies that you're taught how to do that, do those kind of issues like the Journal of Marital Family Therapy, look at the last 10 years, systematic reviews, they get cited more and so forth. So there are different ways that you can go. And I was at JMFT, went to the publisher's place up in Philadelphia, and they gave us a whole workshop of how to scooch it up a bit in terms of citations. So these are the things that universities are going to be evaluated with, faculty are going to be evaluated with, and there's a lot of pressure on folks to publish. You've heard that publish or perish thing, right? So in the US, it's Elsevier Scopus. Internationally, it's Clarivis Web of Science. Now, interestingly enough, the global one I think is better because they also look at books, they look at conference presentations, but it's still, I'm very scared of whatever the world normalized citation impact is. See, one of the issues is we've simplified what it means to be impactful. If you go back to the ancient days, professors worried most about impacting the students they taught. And I don't know if I'm old enough that the professor would bring in, every class was a paper they had written. And there were notes that they revised every year. And so some of the great books, Fred de Saussure's book on linguistics, that was done posthumously by his students saying, we want to share those ideas with the rest of the world. That was the impact. Not how many people besides your mom cited your paper, that kind of stuff. So those are things that can be possibly abused. Well, academic publishing is a big business. Now, I think some of these numbers are probably low. A $19 billion business, over 30,000 journals worldwide, 16,000 are totally open access journals, 5.14 million articles per year. That's more than McDonald's and hamburgers, I believe, right? And the article processing charge, like I talked to you before for that, anywhere from $500 to $5,000 per article. I haven't got my calculator up here, but I think, let's say 500 times 5.14 million. I think that's a lot of money. So it's an opportunity, right? All you need to do is to have a computer. It's like the old days of the internet when I was first teaching my students how to get online. And they were so amazed that there were bad people on the internet. I know it's in the clouds, but it's not angels that are on the internet. Bad people are on the internet too. So remember, you got to worry about the human beings. So the scary world, right? This is the kinds of things that we can see every day. Predatory journals, right? Those journals that are in it only for the money and that are publishers. And it's the kind of stuff, do you get those emails? Hey, we're publishing next week. You got a paper? I feel like it's a person on the corner. Psst, come here, I want to show you. What in the world is going on? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm a shady character. I get this stuff all the time. Well, I got one the other day and said, you want to get a paper in Scopus? How about Web of Science? Want to be first author, second author? You let us know. We'll take care of you. We got a paper for you. Holy mackerel, this is amazing. It goes on all the time, right? Now, there's plenty of legitimate resources out there that help authors become published and so forth. But this seems like a little bit too helpful in terms of that. I got another the other day that was this paper that you had written. It was a book review, and it says, hey, would you like to edit a special issue based upon it? And, qualitative analysis is both in social sciences, but also in chemistry. It was a chemistry journal. I don't know about you. I know nothing about moles, right? Or I know them in my yard, but I don't know too. I remember it was back in the, and it's like, would you like to, anyway. Now it gets worse. You can have an editor go rogue. I don't know where all these editors are being bribed, but nobody sends any bribes to me. So I don't know, maybe you can do something wrong. But in these rogue or hijacked or cloned journals, there was one of these, Retraction Watch is my new favorite site to get information from. So the author emails the editor and says, I'm very confused. A couple of weeks ago, I got a rejection email from the journal. And now I get this email that says my paper has been accepted. Please pay the $1,000. Right. I was updating our page at TQR about all the qualitative research journals. And probably half of them had the links were broken because publishers changed their URLs and so forth. You better kill that old URL because someone out there is looking for it and will put up a clone journal using a bogus URL. You get those things all the time. It looks like it's one address and it's really not that address. And you think you've sent your paper to a legitimate, but it's a zombie, right? It's not real, but the article processing charge is real, right? And so you've got to really watch out for those kind of things. I've never heard of these things before. More than 10,000 retractions just in 2023. Now, in the old days, maybe you'd see once in a while there'd be a errata, that there was some, a boo-boo here or there. A number of years ago, there was a story where a researcher out in California, she was wanting to try to collect all the research. It was some research done in Bell Labs. I think it was Bell Labs. And she had found a couple of papers. And it was weird. There was two different studies showing the effectiveness of whatever it was. And it was the same graph. It's kind of unusual. So she contacted the lead author and goes, oh, that graduate student, I told her, we'll get that fixed. Well, a friend of hers was also doing research on the East Coast. Hey, let's put it together. Well, we found a third article and a fourth article and so forth. He was just putting up the same data. You probably know more of the cold fusion kind of thing and that. Now, again, as editors, we don't like to publish papers that have results that are not effective. And we don't like to publish studies that try to replicate. We probably should do more of that in order to be able to have that checks and balances. So I used special issues. That's a really good thing for an editor. This is an emerging area. I want to get people together and do this. But now this is like for hire, right? That, for this, low price or whatever, you can do that. And then editors, self-publishing their own citations. I haven't have gotten to citation cartels yet. Now, what this is going to do, it creates the kind of thing that you've been seeing at Harvard and MIT and Stanford. You're going to get folks doing this, what they call plagiarism wars, and they're going to review everybody's work to see if they can find word recycling or plagiarism and so forth and so on. And again, that's going to hurt the credibility. And what could hurt if the federal government gets involved, right? And so there's a call for, the Department of Research, integrity, misconduct, and so forth to get involved with that. Good thing it won't become political. Maybe. So these are the kind of things that are going on. So falsification and fabrication, either making up the whole stuff up or fiddling with it. And I'm not talking about rotating axis, which is always a funny thing anyway. The plagiarism, self-plagiarism. Again, these systematic reviews. This is the same paper. 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 Now, I was going to put up there, I didn't want to offend anybody. There's also a thing called salami slicing. That's part of the adult language part. And so that is taking one research study and publishing it in 6 different papers. One study, I only had 5 research questions, it must be 5 papers. Again, that's overinflating the citation thing, right? Forced authorship. I should probably put parasitic authorship. We get papers of the qualitative report, and it's the student and like the 3 or 4 committee members on the dissertation. Okay, you read the draft once. That's not an authorship. But there are so many places you don't get out unless all those faculty members, they don't deserve to be on there. That's driving up their publications, it's driving up their citations. And what can the poor student do? You want to graduate, don't you? Yeah. So the paper's all like I. And so we ask, what do these other people do? You know, they probably even staple the paper. I mean, what is going on? The other thing is that, and this is happening, we get the growth, just the population growth in the world is that in TQR, we get tons of papers from Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, India, and we're big at the University of Kathmandu for some reason. And then, you know, up through Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so forth, lots of papers from there. A lot of British models, so they've got most of their students, most of their methodology training on the master's level. And now in the old days, they'd be sitting side by side with their professor. Now they're said you cannot graduate till you publish a paper. And usually it's in an English language journal. And you get a lot of, I'm never going to publish, you know, even here, right? I teach 3,000 hours a week. And now because of that stupid US news, I got to publish 4 or 5 papers a week. Are we training people? Are we preparing people to do that? You know, then you got the gift authorship. You know, hey, Ron, I'd like to put your name on here. No, thank you. I mean, I have no idea what you did. But maybe putting Chenail's name on there, the editor goes, because the editor will see who did it, whether using blind review or not. I go, wow, Chenail, he's pretty credible most of the time. And so that's all the time. Authorship for sale. My favorite one, there was a big time researcher in Egypt, and he went public saying, the university hasn't been paying me. Another university hired his name to be put on their papers to help with the publication. And so he got mad and went public because, you know, and then I hope people at the university were paying attention saying, we want this guy at our university. That's going a lot. We talked about the retractions, author fault. You don't even have to be asked. They're putting people's names on papers. So you're going to have to probably have, I don't always advise this, but you probably need to Google yourself often and check to see what's going on with your brand out there, because you may be publishing things you never thought you did, right? Paper bills, right? These are this like the ghostwriter, and just maybe AI will help this to go better, but just producing these papers, gearing them for the Scopus and the Web of Science for sale. That's going on. And the citation cartels. You know, you cite me, I cite you, we got to deal with it. And they're just inflating the self-importance of their work because it's being cited, right? Because I'll help you, you help me. And so that's what I'm saying. You're going to be so careful what goes into your papers. Editor bribing, we talked about this. And the co-author participation services, that was the one for a minimal fee. We could put your name on a paper and we'll help you get published, even though you have nothing to do with the paper itself. Now, as far as then so how do we get to this? Well, part of it is having these demands of publishing and having these demands of publishing better and better journals, and not providing the resources, not providing the training, and not providing the time to do these things. Everybody writes on the weekends, everybody writes evenings, and so forth and so on. But the idea about how about establishing research programs, right? And those sorts of things. We talked about the forced authorship. I'm not going to get promoted. I'm not going to get a raise unless I publish 3.5 articles in the top. Those are tremendous demands. It's going to pressure, and I don't know if it's going to make things worse. Jim's I got to blame the library science book, right? All these impact things. These were used in the library to see whether or not you continue to subscribe for a journal if anybody's reading it and using it. That's how it started. These kind of interesting stats, and they're good stats, but now that becomes the currency that we're dealing in, those kinds of citations and that. And then the publishing profitability, and I'm not saying about the big 5 and so forth, is that people, what country publishes the most journals right now? China, right? The China passed the United States. And so this is a worldwide phenomenon because with little investment, you can be in the game, legitimately or not. Okay, what can we do? Okay, well, maybe kind of get back to why you're doing research in the first place. It's what you're trying to accomplish. Answer the big questions, address the big questions, answers, try to explore those things that are important to each other. Not that I got to get a citation, I got to get that's going to open up that kind of publishing mentality, right? At the same time, to have unrealistic expectations. So better faculty and student preparation. But this is the key one here, faculty reviews and evaluations. A number of years ago, I was asked to review a dissertation that of one of our colleges here, and someone had said this student, they were doing their research, and they found that the student seemed to have plagiarized from another student's earlier dissertation in their dissertation. So they brought the student in, and the student admitted to plagiarizing, but then said, "I've never read that other dissertation. I plagiarized from this book." So not only was that dissertation plagiarized, well, the other one was plagiarized from the original source. So we've got to do a better job with it. We have to do a better job when we're evaluating our colleagues' work too, in terms of that legitimate thing. But it starts with education, with all of that. Never more important to be wise when you're selecting your journal, right? If you're going to say, okay, maybe it takes more time and you work on a paper to get it in a higher level journal because it will benefit you because of promotions and so forth. You need to be more aware of that. When you're an editor or your reviewer, you have to have your scrutiny has to be more important. Look at those articles, look them up. Now, a good paper could be published in a predatory journal. It probably could have been a better paper if they had received the type of peer review and guidance, but in itself, it may be a good paper. And so publishers, you have to watch your editors like a hawk. You have to really be, what's being published in your journals. And so some of the criticism has been that some of the, again, you want to do due diligence, but some of the criticism has been that some of the publishers seem to be slow to retracting articles. Now, if you're getting paid, and you can see there's an economic thing you got to worry about. So protect your work. It starts with quality control and data integrity with your own work. Watch out for conflicts of interest. And you're the author. So the responsibility of authorship, you are the authority. And yes, you are the responsible party. Every word, every article, every bit of data, it's your responsibility. So I love these things when I get this, hi, I just submitted my paper last week. When will I know about it? Because I won't grad. Sorry, that's not my concern. When time becomes of the essence, quality suffers. So, don't send the paper out until you can stand by every word and stand by every bit of data and stand by every source that you reference. See, the old days was like, don't do the secondary sources because this person is citing this. Well, primary sources, you have to police that. The writing, whether it's human, artificial, I don't know about you, but Microsoft Word helps me write better, right? So you're responsible for that. Copyrights and permissions, plagiarism, duplication, and obviously reference checks. During the submission, I said context matters. And so here are the helpful guides that are out there. When you're a journal editor, these are the places that scrutinize your journal. This is where you submit it, and they have great information about all the stuff that I'm talking about. They're mentioned Clarivate, Scopus, Ulrich, and these are databases that we're subscribed to here in the library, so you can get this information directly by coming to the Alvin Sherman Library. Get your library card today, and then you've got the Directive Open Access journals, right? So then here are, believe it or not, these are like the nerdiest organizations, but they're really valuable. The Association of Learned and Professional Society Publishers, COPE, that's the one where it's trying to police what's going on out there, and then so forth. Then you have, these are journals. There are journals about journals. Who would have figured? But there are. And they're a good read. I think we're subscribed to all of these here in the library about that. Now, here are the ones that probably are the easiest ones to get access to. The Academia Stack Exchange is really good because it has basic information. What is a predatory journal? Click, read it there. So all those terms I said before, I didn't put links to all of those, but if you go to the Stack Exchange, they will tell you about that. Then predatory publishing, publishing state. The Retraction Watch is the one that every day I get a little news feed about what new horror story has happened in the world of academic publishing. And then Think, Check, and Submit is a lot about all the work that when you think your paper's done before getting your paper ready for publication, ready for public scrutiny and consumption. So thank you so much. That's the presentation. So we have time for, well, I got my cue back there. Do you have questions from the web, please? Not online yet. Are you sure they're all real? No. Any questions or comments here? I didn't scare you too much, did I? Yes. Oh, we have to do the mic? Okay. We have a bigger budget this year. We have two mics.
This is probably beside the point, but I'm curious as to what happens to the graduate student who produces a paper that contains plagiarism. Are they given another chance, or is that the end for them? Where does it go from there?
Well, thank you. Well, I'm not gonna be like, it depends. And really that's where that in some, even here at the university, there are certain levels of gradients of plagiarism. For example, if you cite the source, but didn't put it into quotation marks because it was a direct quote, that may be looked differently as, I had to review a dissertation one time. And someone said this person got help and so forth. So I looked at it and I looked at all the references and the reference looked good and that. And then I looked at one that was referenced a lot in the paper. And then I looked at that reference and then I crosswalked. 95% of this author's other citations were from that paper. So someone should, oh, did I say before that double plagiarism dissertation? That was the same faculty chair. So some of the blame has to be on the faculty person to read these things. So to me, I would say before it gets to be that high stakes thing, is that in your classes, have the assignments that replicate these competencies. You know, in terms of the APA, the American Psychological Association, it kind of lays these things out. Remember one time I had students having trouble writing. I said, why don't you read that? He goes, what does it have to do with writing? Well, it's just not the citation, it's the front part of it. So in some cases, though, that it is, if you've plagiarized, then it's the retraction and so forth. Some places put the student basically on probation and that they have to go back and they have to learn and then talk about, they have to be contrite and they have to talk about what they need to do and understanding what the errors that they made. But it's, you know, when you get something like that, that should be a learning moment. And that's where the reading is so important. I guess I should have just put reading. You know, more reading with this, but it can be that they're done with that. Now, sometimes with the faculty, it's a little bit harder. Because what happens is that does that ever get back to, now the paper gets retracted, but if there's no consequence for the faculty member at their university. I had one, I was at JMFT, accepted this paper, it's a great paper. My co-editor, was his area. And then a few months later, it hadn't been published yet. A few months later, he said, you know, I was up by the literatures, the articles for this class I'm doing. And I came across an interesting thing. This paper had been accepted by another journal, but then had been retracted by the editor because they found out that it had been previously published as a chapter. Right. So I also rejected the paper that way. About a year later, I got a thing from someone said, hey, do you know anything about this author? And it was a flyer for the workshops he was doing. And he said he had where all his papers had been accepted, then rejected. And it's true, we had accepted it. So the idea is that you have to then contact the university, a provost and so forth, because that person will continue it. So I think, unfortunately, students probably have to pay a greater price than the faculty. Yes. Oh, it's my mom calling. Oh.
Are there consequences to plagiarizing yourself? I mean, if I write something to an original thought, but the publication never actually followed through to the highest level, and I wanted to resubmit that paper in another format, can I get in trouble for plagiarizing myself?
Well, it depends upon the copywriting. Now, one is in traditional publishing, you assign your copyrights, not to the ideas, but to the words. So you're even limited to how much you can take directly from another paper that's been copyrighted. Now, with the open access of the different types of copyright, there's different levels of copywriting that it could be shared or all of yours, but there's still the integrity question. If this has already been published, you're kind of clouding the waters. Now, what makes things worse, and I took it out, are preprints. So preprints are people who post their paper before it's been published. Now, some journals now are requiring that because they want public scrutiny. I don't think I need any more criticism than I get every day now, but some people obviously have higher self-esteem than I do. And so they're out there. And so and why they like that is they get a DOI. And that's not a driving thing. It's a digital, right? You know that. And so then that gets cited, which then can change as it goes through the editorial process. And when it gets published, that has a DOI. So that's a whole new world as to whether or not that constitutes it is public. Is it published? So that's a question that's emerging today as to what really constitutes that. But the basic approach is you wrote the paper. The problem that what I talked about, that author shouldn't have published original research in a book chapter. They get much more impact and credibility by going through the level of peer review at a journal than what you get the type of peer review you get when you do a chapter in a book. So that's just the thing. That'll go back to what I was talking before. In the United States, that book chapter won't count. In the world, it will count. But in US, that won't count because it's not a journal. That's funny. When you look at the APA in terms of titles, journals, all the words are capitalized, right? Because they're the most important. Books, nah. First word after that. So the journal is considered to be that's why the credibility of these things are so important in terms of the big questions about science and knowledge and producing credible things, because it affects us every day, all the time. Any other questions, comments?
Put it depend person published in the book chapter, because I've done that, because it's a lot easier and quicker. I put it in there. It's hard to get stuff through peer review process. It's gotten difficult with time, etc. And if you want to bring it to attention to people reading your chapter, I've done it. So little defense there. Just gotta be careful.
Yeah, no, I have plenty of book chapters. On my CV, I differentiate those between the peer-reviewed articles and invited things and that. So you have to kind of do that. And that's a culture thing. Questions in the back?
Say thank you. There are a lot of thank you comments on there, but we're out of time.
Okay, well, they can send me money too. That would be really great. So thank you all so much.
Don't go anywhere. We want to present to you the certificate of appreciation for your contribution today and for supporting us, the libraries, throughout the year with all that you do for us. So thank you so much, everyone. You got 15 minutes to go to your next session, wherever that may be. And have a great day. I will see you back at lunch.